Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. I'm Blake Berman, tonight touring the devastation. President Trump and the First Lady in Texas getting a first-hand look at the damage from the catastrophic floods.
But you say to yourself, you know, how do you give condolences? How do you do that to a young person that 3 days ago was here, 4 days ago was here and vibrant, and now is no longer here?
They gave me this special bracelet from the camp in honor of all of the little girls that they lost their lives.
Just some of the scenes in Texas today. We'll show you more throughout the hour. Also, what NewsNation is learning tonight about the future of FEMA as well. Back here in Washington, what is going on over at the Department of Justice? Infighting at the DOJ over the handling of the Epstein files. Is a shakeup coming there? Also tonight, droning on, I guess you could say. The Pentagon says they want to unleash drone dominance, and this was the video right here, the defense secretary putting it out. What is that all about? We'll show you later in the hour, but first tonight here from the Hill, it was this story that we showed you basically throughout the hour all day yesterday, responding to the raids, a showdown at 2 California farms. Hundreds arrested, we now know tonight, 1 farm worker dead, and we now also have a clearer view of the threats that federal law enforcement once again faced while carrying out immigration raids. We begin tonight with our Nancy Liu, live once again out west in Ventura County, California, with what we're learning there this evening, Nancy, on a couple different levels, really.
Yeah, you got it, Blake. NewsNation has learned that the massive federal operation here yesterday brought in more than 300 new detainees. And this operation stretched late into the night, drawing hundreds of activists and protesters here to Glass House Farms. This is a cannabis grower northwest of L.A. Now, the scene got violent at times between federal officials and protesters, some seen throwing rocks and bottles, officers responding with tear gas, flashbangs, and non-lethal rounds. Now, the FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for the capture of a man suspected of opening fire at officers. During the raid and skirmishes, multiple people hurt. As you mentioned, 1 farm worker has died. According to the United Farm Workers Union, the man reportedly fell off a building while possibly trying to flee. Now, CBP reports that 10 of the newly detained are juveniles as young as 14 years old, and 8 of them are in the U.S. illegally after entering as unaccompanied minors. In a statement, Glass House Farms denied knowingly violating child labor laws. This morning, we saw a number of workers leaving this facility after successfully evading capture by hiding inside all night. And Blake, behind me, you might see some relatives here still. They are hoping that their loved one is still inside in hiding, but the odds are high that they're in federal custody.
Our Nancy Liu live tonight, Southern California for us. Nancy, thank you. Joining me live now here on the Hill, the California Democratic Congressman Lou Correa. He is a member of the Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees. Congressman Correa's district is in that Southern California area. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. And I want to let our audience know you're a Democrat. We're going to hear from the other side of the aisle, your colleague Rich McCormick, in moments. But thanks for being with us. We learn now that someone is dead from these raids. We saw the images of law enforcement being fired at, and there's now a $50,000 FBI award to try to track that individual down. It's escalating, Congressman, and I wonder, from your perspective, what you think needs to come next.
Well, I'm going to ask, what happened here? A few weeks ago, Santa Ana, my district, we get the National Guard. We get masked federal agents, I think they're federal agents, come down on our community. We're a very peaceful community. So why is it that we need this heavy hand from the federal government? President Trump said we're going after criminals. Let's do that. But right now you're picking up hardworking individuals who have been here 25, 30 years. Just a week and a half ago, they picked up an individual who has 3 children 3 U.S. Marine Corps officers, and they have them in custody. We're a peaceful neighborhoods here. Why do we need this heavy hand from the federal government?
Here's what Homeland Security says. Gavin Newsom, the sitting governor, your governor out there, he said kids running from tear gas, crying on the phone because their mother was just taken from the fields. Trump calls me new scum, but he's the real scum. And here's what DHS responded with. Why are there children working at a marijuana facility, Gavin? What say you?
There shouldn't be any children at a marijuana facility, but remember, President Trump said he was going to legalize marijuana so these kinds of issues wouldn't happen. Federal government takes federal tax dollars from these growers, so I think we got to enforce these laws.
I think the issue, though, is that they're pointing towards unaccompanied minors.
More than 50% of the farm workers are undocumented in California, sir. More than 50% of those farm workers are undocumented. We know that. We're the biggest ag state in the union. Why are we having such a heavy hand?
Okay.
This is not right.
Here was Tom Homan. Here was Tom Homan on the White House North Lawn yesterday as all of this was playing out. He came out, he spoke to reporters. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
You have the right to protest. I support that. But when you cross the line on impeding us, you're going to be arrested. If you cross the line and putting hands on an ICE officer, 0 tolerance, you're going to be arrested. So yell and scream all you want. You're not going to stop ICE from doing our job.
What would you say to Tom Homan there?
Mr. Homan, we have American citizens who are being detained right now by ICE. We have one of my constituents that was just arrested, an American citizen and attorney. She put no hands on any ICE officer, and she was detained. This is about creating terror, fear in our community. How do you expect people to respond to masked federal agents? Our police officers don't have masks. Our sheriffs don't have masks. Why do you come into our neighborhoods with masks on?
I'll leave it there. Congressman Lou Correa is a Democrat from Southern California. Congressman, I thank you for being with us. As I told you and I told our audience, we'll hear from the other side of the aisle now. Appreciate it, sir. Joining me live here on the Hill is Rich McCormick. He is a Republican from the state of Georgia, once again with us. Hello to you.
Good to see you today.
Thanks for being in. What would you say to your colleague there?
Well, first of all, realize that you have child trafficking going on. We have lost tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors who have come across the border and then disappear. That's the United States of America. We've been scolding other countries about this for years. We don't know if they're being sexually trafficked or if they're working in marijuana farms. They're not with their parents, and yet they're gainfully employed, and we want to pretend like that's something good. We know for a fact that there's human trafficking. They're paying off their debts from being smuggled across the border, working pennies on the dollar, working basically as slave labor, and we pretend like that's something good? Let's not kid ourselves. This is illegal and something we've made many laws about this, and we don't want foreign countries to do it. Why would we support that here in the United States?
Everyone wants to protect children, right?
Of course.
Of all ages.
Of course. And by the way, adults also.
Of course. As you heard from the congressman there, though, the administration has sort of been all over the map on farms, right? Whether these mass deportations should be at farms or shouldn't be. What would you say to the congressman and those who say, wait a minute, why are you going to farms?
Well, hey, I've always said the business of America is business. I understand what farms need to do to cultivate. Right. And I understand what they're doing, and that's why they've been using illegal immigrants for decades now. But we need to fix our laws. Instead of saying, oh, this is horrible what the president's doing, he's enforcing the laws that Congress passed. We can't say all of a sudden we're abdicating all of our authority to the president. He's trying to enforce the laws that we've passed. If you don't like the laws, fix them. If you don't like the way we immigrate, fix them. I'm all about.
Are there any fixes though? Because you know the conversation of immigration reform has been talked about time and time and time again,
and it's become a third rail, especially for Republicans. And I'm actually very progressive. We need to right size our legal immigration so it doesn't undercut people in America having jobs, but that it supplies the necessary labor force that we need, whether it be in the hotel industry, healthcare, construction, agriculture, IT. That needs to be right-sized every year. We need to be a little bit more detailed and sophisticated in the way we approach this. But child labor, look at what just happened today. 10 children being basically taken into custody. We have tens of thousands of children that disappeared. Where are they?
Do you fear, though, Congressman, that you're losing the narrative, that you're losing the battle on the messaging? Because when you look at the polling, Americans' views on immigration's effect on the U.S., it has ticked up to 79% as a good thing. And then when it comes to approval of the president's handling on immigration, only 28% of independents view it positively.
Well, once again, this today was a very sentinel day where you get to identify exactly why this is a problem. Would it be better to ignore that we have children working in marijuana fields? That's okay. We should turn a blind eye to that because it's good for the marijuana industry. Let's not kid ourselves. Once again, this is an evil thing that's being done. This isn't for the good of America. This is for the bad of children. And we can get that message out there through the media and say, look, do you want us to ignore that? Do you want us to ignore that we have children being smuggled across the border to work as basically slaves, and that's going to be okay?
Let me leave you with this. You're from Georgia, as I mentioned. A lot of ag there, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you want ICE? Do you want CBP or federal agents of any kind coming into the fields there?
I don't want child labor. I don't want human trafficking for slave labor. I want to fix our laws. I want to right-size our immigration to make it legal so they're paying taxes instead of avoiding taxes. When they're getting Medicaid, they're doing it legal. And we want to right-size the system. We can't keep on cheating the system and pretend like our laws are okay. They're not okay. We need to fix it.
We'll leave it there. I appreciate you on a Friday coming on in. Rich McCormick is a Republican from Georgia. Again, thank you to Lou Correa, a Democrat out there in the state of California. With me now, Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello to you.
My friend.
My brother. There's a lot going on here. This has escalated. Unfortunately, you have someone who is dead. You have law enforcement literally being fired upon out there. And that is just some of what's happening, Chris. We just heard from both sides of the aisle, and I wonder what you take away from it.
So, you mentioned the polling on the effect of immigrants on the nation and people feeling more positively toward immigrants. There was a trend over the past decade where Americans became increasingly open to the idea of total deportation of all illegal immigrants. That used to be a 35% thing. And then one day we woke up and it was 60%.
Yeah, it was in the mid-60s.
And it was because of the post-COVID surge that came in under the Biden administration, which is how Donald Trump got reelected president. Now, here's the problem. The act of mass deportation is itself unpopular. The idea of mass deportation, when people are responding to what feels like a crisis in their communities, the idea is popular. Right. The masked troops who go into the fields and go into the cities, they look like the military and they're doing this stuff. That's unpopular. And so this is where campaign rhetoric, when it collides with the actual thing, is tough.
So to be clear, though, the president's actions on the border, successful.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you think the White House should be perceiving sort of this next phase?
Well, look, I think there are divisions within the administration on this question. And you have Stephen Miller, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem.
Yep.
They're going to go as hard as they can go.
Okay.
And they like those images. They want and they believe it is deterrent. They think that it will people will self-deport. Right. They believe that fewer people will come, and that this will work in that way. But then you go across a few blocks over, and you get to the Department of Agriculture, you get to the Department of Commerce, you get to the other place where they say, wait, the downstream economic effects of this have to be considered.
Catch you later in the show.
We should.
Full panel, Friday night unfiltered as well.
Ooh.
Thanks, my man. Appreciate it. Still to come tonight. Here on the Hill, a daring attack called Operation Spider's Web. You remember this from Ukraine earlier this summer? Now the U.S. might be taking notice how the Pentagon wants to rewrite its war strategy, plus this.
Our nation, we mourn for every single life that was swept away in the flood, and we pray for the families that are left behind.
The president tours the flood devastation in Texas. We are live in the Lone Star State later here on the Hill. And is the president's base splitting at this point in time, at least some of it? What is going on over at the DOJ as it relates to the Epstein files? I thank you for being with us tonight. Here on the Hill, I'm Blake Berman, back with you in 4 minutes.
Out here to rebuild the military, match capabilities to the threats of today. So while our adversaries have produced millions of cheap drones, before us, we were mired in bureaucratic red tape. Not anymore.
Unleash the drones, Pete Hegseth says. That is now the Pentagon's new mission, at least in part. The defense secretary ordering sweeping changes to the U.S. military's drone strategy by rescinding, quote, restrictive policies. The Pentagon says it will double down on drone technology by increasing U.S. drone manufacturing, including low-cost drones and using drones in combat training. We have seen this. I think the world really woke up to this in June of earlier this year when Russian drones took out of nowhere up to 40, or Ukrainian drones rather, up to 40 of Russia's top fleet, some of their top airplanes, really military fighter jets, having many people wondering what comes next in this phase. With me now is retired General Richard Newton, NewsNation national security contributor, with us once again here on the Hill. Hello to you, sir.
Blake, good to be with you again, and this is a fascinating topic. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, this is beyond fascinating because there was that June 1st event, right, where Russia had like a third of its military fleet just gone, the fighter jets. And there was this surprise drone attack, which were cheap, right? And this is the video right here, in which a lot of folks were wondering, okay, then what comes next? And here's where I want to begin, because the head of the Army then testified this up on Capitol Hill.
At a cost of a mere tens of thousands of dollars, Ukraine inflicted billions in damage, and drones are but one example of a broader shift. The Army needs to keep pace. In my first 3 months as Secretary, General George and I have been immersed in understanding why the Army has been slow to innovate.
So where are we now, General? Because the Defense Secretary clearly believes this is a top priority.
Absolutely, and I applaud Secretary Pete Hegseth. It's not just the United States Army that needs to keep pace. Frankly, Blake, it's the entire U.S. military. And so that's where we go with this. And I think what Pete Hegseth is trying to do is, first and foremost, cut red tape, not only within the United States military, the operational side of the equation of drones, but certainly in the defense industrial base. I've been part of that, back in the day. I'm a graybeard combat aviator now, but back in 2003 and 2005, I oversaw on global operations on the Joint Chiefs the nascent capabilities we had with drones. But fast forward to today, you've got the battlefield in Ukraine alone, Blake, is changing every 90 days. And the capabilities that these drones are providing for operational commanders, both in Russia and Ukraine, and frankly elsewhere around the world, is staggering. The United States is falling behind. There's a gap here between production capability between Russia and China. We need to keep pace, as Pete Hegseth said. You know, if I had told you, Lieutenant General, 20 years ago that we'd be talking, there'd be this little thing on the internet called X, and the Defense Secretary would post a video with flying drones around him there at the Pentagon and say, this is the future, you would have said, Berman, what are you talking about? You're nuts. But here we are, and I guess it leads to the question of what does the military look like 20 years from now if this is where we are at this moment? Well, we've got to start right now with really understanding what the current battlefield is providing capabilities to those now senior commanders who've taken my place, if you will. But in Russia and Ukraine, Israel, Iran, and elsewhere, obviously the United States is taking note of those conflicts. And this is where we need to provide our warfighters, the battlefield commanders, not talking at the general officers, this is at the colonels and below, with capabilities that can really go out and find, fix, target, and destroy targets against our adversaries. That keeps our soldiers alive and able to fight and win our fights for today. But you're right, 20 years from now, I think it's going to be, more of this technology may not necessarily be in the scope of drones, but I'm thinking cyber, I'm thinking space-based weapons capabilities along those lines. But this is a good, fresh start. Cut red tape, give our military the capabilities they need, as I mentioned, to fight and win our nation's war. We've got to close the gap between Russia and China. And frankly, my final point is here, we've got to make sure the defense industrial base is now, invigorated to go out and really find the best capabilities and to provide those, not within years, Blake, but say within a 90 to 120-day period of time. I see the passion. I can tell that you think we're on to something here. Lieutenant General Richard Newton with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Blake. Still much more ahead tonight as we continue. The president on the ground in Texas.
It's hard to believe the devastation. Trees that are 100 years old just ripped out of the ground.
On the other side of the break, one of the top officials there in the state alongside the president today tells us what he saw alongside the commander-in-chief. And what's next with FEMA? Where's the White House tonight on that issue? Kelly Meyer will tell us. Stay with us. .30 out in the state of Texas tonight, 6:30 here in Washington, exactly 1 week removed from the catastrophic flooding in Texas. And today, the commander-in-chief fully immersing himself in the role of consoler-in-chief. The president surveying the damage in the Texas Hill Country along with the First Lady. The president spending time in Kerrville, Texas, an area at the center of the destruction. The Texas Governor Greg Abbott, much of the Texas congressional delegation alongside the president throughout the day. As of right now, 120 people confirmed to be dead, 166 missing. The president holding a roundtable alongside the governor, where he paid tribute to the girls who lost their lives at Camp Mystic.
A lot of young angels at the girls' Christian summer camp, known as Camp Mystic. They were there because they loved God, and as we grieve this unthinkable tragedy, we take comfort in the knowledge that God has welcomed those little, beautiful girls into his comforting arms in heaven.
Our Xavier Walton is in Kerrville, Texas tonight with the very latest and the president's trip there. Xavier?
Hey, Blake, yeah, the president's saying, you know, this damage that he's seen in comparison to other natural disasters, and he's seen his fair share, was to him the worst. And when you take a look at stuff like this, you can certainly understand why. I mean, this wall of water completely wiping and washing away homes off their foundations. And then over here, Blake, I mean, this is something we've been here and we just noticed this. But take a look at this power pole completely splintered. That's how powerful the water was. And to give you an idea how high it was, we're going to point you in the direction of the bridge over there. The water was that high 1 week ago. Now search and rescue crews tasked with recovery, residents also playing a role.
3 times we smelled the smell of death, human death, as we're walking. But those dogs smell that better than we do. So I'm surprised that they didn't start digging over there. You never know.
And that is a harsh reality, that scene playing out over and over. Blake, you said this before sending it out to me. Still more than 160 lives lost or being found out here. Work is far from done.
Our Xavier Walton live tonight there in the Lone Star State. Xavier, thank you. The president joined by the governor, both of the state senators, the congressional delegation as well on his trip. The state's agriculture commissioner, Sid Miller, also with the president today as part of that group there in Texas. And the Ag Commissioner, Sid Miller, back once again with us tonight here on the Hill. Sir, you're in your vehicle as I see it. Nice to see you. You were there in Kerrville earlier today with the president. What's needed tonight going forward? What was some of your experience as you witnessed all that today?
Well, what's needed is prayers. We've got a lot of help, an overabundance of help. We'll need more help. You know, later is you know, as the cameras leave and the next news cycle, he has something different. But the president first.
As you saw there, Sid Miller was in his vehicle out on the road, probably not the best of cell service. But this was some of the images today of the president there in Texas. He was on the ground for several hours. You see him here meeting with some of the first responders, and you could only imagine what it was like for the folks there on the ground in Texas as they still recover from all of this, and the president and the first lady there today. Well, heading into the disaster, the president and his administration publicly supported the idea of scrapping FEMA and letting the states handle responding to natural disasters. Here's what the president said back in June.
We want to wean off of FEMA. and we want to bring it down to the state level. A little bit like education, we're moving it back to the states so the governors can handle it. That's why they're governors now. If they can't handle it, they shouldn't be governor. But the FEMA thing has not been a very successful experiment. Very, very expensive, and it doesn't get the job done.
Now it's potentially on the table that the administration is backtracking on its plans to abolish FEMA. Our Kelly Meyer live at the White House tonight with where that stands. Kelly?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. So President Trump seeming to say today that FEMA is cleaning up its act. The administration shifting its tone from elimination of the agency to reforming the agency. Here's what President Trump had to say today.
FEMA has deployed multiple emergency response units, and FEMA has been really headed by some very good people. We have some good people running FEMA. It's about time, right? We get some good ones. They failed us in North Carolina, but when we got in on January 20th, they fixed it up in no time.
And here's what a White House official had to tell us earlier today. Quote, while federal assistance was always intended to supplement state actions, not replace those actions, FEMA's outsized role created a bloated bureaucracy that disincentivized state investment in their own resilience. Now, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem discussed the shift of power to the states and that the federal government would be there if needed. Take a listen to this. And the President's FEMA Review Council will recommend to the President how FEMA may be reformed. Blake.
Kelly Meyer, live tonight on the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. Still to come tonight here from the Hill. A bit of drama this evening over at the Department of Justice and its handling of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Is a top official there about to resign because of all of this? What we are learning tonight about the sort of infighting over at DOJ over this story here, as the president's base is a little more than upset. Full panel, other side of the break.
NewsNation revisits the assassination attempt on President Trump in a one-hour special.
This is a hard moment for America.
Digging into the investigation and how those affected are surviving. The plot to kill Trump 1 year later. Sunday, 9/8 Central on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back. It is the top story on thehill.com tonight, and for that matter, for much of the president's base as well. Look at this. Dan Bongino fumes at Justice Department's handling of the Epstein files. A source telling the Hill that Bongino, who's the number 2 over at the FBI, has clashed with the Justice Department and leaders there over the past week as a result of Attorney General Pam Bondi's handling of that case, the Epstein case. The White House, as you know, promised transparency over the files. Earlier this week, though, the Justice Department and the FBI concluded that there was no Epstein client list and that Epstein died by suicide in jail in 2019. Now, President Trump, when asked about this earlier this week, appeared eager to close the case at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
But some of the president's top supporters remain outraged. For example, here's the Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene posting on social media, quote, "No one believes there is not a client list." The administration, though, is pushing back tonight on the reporting about this infighting, this rift between DOJ and the FBI, releasing a statement that says, quote, "This work is being carried out seamlessly and with unity. Any attempt to sow division within this team is baseless and distracts from the real progress being made," end quote. By the way, Bondi's number 2 over at the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche, taking to social media, basically saying the same thing, saying the suggestion by anyone that there was any daylight between the FBI and DOJ leadership on the memo's composition and release is patently false. By the way, that's not the only issue this week dividing the president from his base. We'll get to that in a second. Full panel, though, with me now. Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary in the first Trump White House. Lori Watkins is a former policy advisor to President Obama. Chris Stirewalt, of course, host of the Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. And Niall Stanage is a White House columnist, for the Hill. Hello to you all. Happy Friday. Thanks for being here. I'm going to start with Bill. You're one of the top attorneys in this town. You know the White House well. What's going on? over at DOJ and with the Attorney General and the FBI?
Look, I've been over in that building. I think that team works incredibly well together, from General Bondi to Dag Blanche, Cash, and Dan Bongino down at the FBI.
Until now?
I do think that there could be a division of opinions about what to release and how to release it.
Okay.
But I also think that the president really wants that team to be focused where they should be, which is ending violent crime, going after spies, making sure that national security and supporting DHS on the southern border are the top priorities for that department. And so any sort of distraction like this will not please the president. He will make sure that they all come together. If somebody feels that they have to leave, then he's going to accept that, but he'll urge them to stay.
Do you think he'll nudge someone to leave?
No.
If this becomes top of fold and doesn't get to the other issues that you just laid out?
No, I think the president likes the team that's over there. He likes the focus that they've had, how they did a complete pivot from the Biden administration to focus on violent crime, and I know he believes that they are doing a good job. He wants that team to remain in place, and I think he wants them to achieve his agenda.
Lori?
Well, I think that this is about Trump's base starting to not just fracture but fall apart. The foundation is starting to have cracks in it. And like we saw with Signalgate, I think that someone's going to have to take the fall for this. And if that's going to be the deputy and he's going to leave, then so be it. But you have MAGA influencers at the highest levels possible going after this. You have Bannon, you have Musk, you have Kirk, you have Laura Loomer. These are not nobodies that are really upset about this. And now Pam Bondi's on the other side of the MAGA group that is very up in arms about this, and it's not a good place to be.
Where do you think this goes?
Well, I don't think it goes anywhere good, because the two alternatives here are either that people in the administration have been lying in the sense of suggesting that there was more there in the first place than is actually the case, or they're engaged in a cover-up. There actually is something there, and now they're saying they're not. There isn't some perfect, ideal scenario in this in which the administration's in the clear. That's why it outrages the base so much.
Well, my colleague is exactly right, as usual. The people say a lot of stuff to get elected. They say that they're eating cats in Ohio. They say a lot of stuff. Donald Trump says more than anybody. And if the answer here is that Donald Trump exaggerated and played up, and so did Pam Bondi, and so did these other people, played up the Jeffrey Epstein as an attack on the Clintons and as an attack on the Democrats, and then they get in office and now they say, well, actually, there wasn't a cover-up, and what you think you see is the truth. If they did that, that would be kind of politics, right? People fibbed and exaggerated and played something up to the detriment of their opponent. But option B, behind the door number two, is that there is a cover-up going on. And option A is a lot better. It's a lot better for this administration if option A is that they were whipping up frenzy around Jeffrey Epstein because it was good politics before, not that there's a cover-up.
But I got to make this point. MAGA has been upset or protested presidential actions before with Donald Trump. The most recent one was the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran. Steve Bannon and a lot of others were saying, we're not getting into another forever war. If we actually hit those facilities, it's going to end up with American boots on the ground, and we're going to be in there for another 20 years, right? Where MAGA, the base, is actually going to pay the highest price because they're the ones that go over there. What happened was the president hit those facilities, immediately pivoted to peace, and has now got the best opportunity for peace. That's not a direct parallel to the Epstein, but there's a lot of things that are going on where he may want this because he's got other things that he wants to achieve.
I'll give you a parallel. This week it was support for NATO, right? Or support for Ukraine via NATO with, Patriot defense systems and so on. When you have Mitch McConnell aligned with the president more than Charlie Kirk, Bill, there's something there with the base, is it not?
Right. But the thing is to remember about this president, he really does want peace. He wants the Ukraine war to end. He's tired of it. And this may be a way to get Putin back to the table to actually talk to the Ukrainians or allow the president to get some sort of coalition together to force these parties back to talking peace. He's doing it with Israel, Gaza, and Iran. And, the Chinese, on the trade agreement and everything else. The goal here is a peace dividend for the United States, so we're not spending as much on defense, and we can reinvest here at home.
Well, it's clear that President Trump wants to be known for bringing peace to the world. He has asked every single world leader that comes to visit Washington, D.C. and not come to Washington, D.C. to nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize.
And peace to the world's a good thing.
I didn't say that it wasn't.
I know, but now you're suggesting that.
But trying to wield your power as the president of the United States with world leaders and negotiating power, that's not a good move at all. It was absolutely embarrassing what happened the other day in the White House. We can move on from that.
Which one?
Yeah, which one?
Saying, how did you learn English so well? How it's treating our allies around the world. Yeah, Chris is laughing. Like, it was an embarrassment. And the more that continues to happen, I think the trust in Donald Trump and his negotiating power starts to go down as far as world peace is concerned. And having these backdoor deals of quietly, funding Ukraine in the dead of night and not coming out publicly about it after you put a pause on Biden-era weapons that were being supplied, that's another contradiction there.
It's true that both of the topics we've been speaking about do divide the base. Ukraine on one hand, Epstein on the other. The difference is Ukraine is a legitimate policy difference. There are people who are more isolationist in the MAGA coalition. There are people who are more interventionist. That's very different from Epstein, where Pam Bondi said in February that the Epstein client list is sitting on my desk right now to review, and it has been vaporized from her desk somehow.
She was basically referring to the file, not to the list.
That's handy.
Right.
Yes.
And I go back to my point that I think someone's going to take the fall for this, because if not, they're going to continue to be off message.
Governing is hard. Running for office is a lot easier than governing. And, the buzz phrase, the Tao of Donald Trump is, we take him literally. We don't take him literally. We're supposed to take him seriously. And one of the ways that Donald Trump connected with voters is he said stuff, but he was pointing at larger things, right? He exaggerates, he fabricates, but he's pointing at larger things that connected with voters. I think that the problem, I think Bill is exactly right, that people were concerned about Iran, and then there was no ground war, and the thing didn't happen, and people said, okay, well, this is probably okay, and the same can be done on that. This Epstein thing is a huge mackerel. This is a big problem.
I want to end with Bill here. As I pointed out your background, do you believe Bondi's acting by the book here?
I think Bondi's doing the best that she can with everything that she's got at her disposal. I mean, the president, she has a lot of responsibility on her plate. And after the 4 disastrous years of the Biden administration, I think that there's a lot of cleanup that has to do. People forget that they were only in the first 6 months. And so there's a lot to happen, and a lot that's going to happen over the next 3.5 years, and she's got a big job ahead of her, and I think she's doing a good job.
We'll leave it there. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Other side of the break, a little thing we do here. Ooh. Chris is right. It's called Friday Night Unfiltered. Some of the sort of big images of the week. What were they? And the stories behind them. Chris and I on the other side of the break. And Henna Doba hosting for Elizabeth Vargas tonight. Henna will be talking to a man who was, this is my biggest fear. Attacked by a shark in Florida and lived to tell the tale. I'm not joking. This is
your number one fear?
I was just diving with sharks 2 days ago.
This is
Florida man.
If not my biggest fear,
Florida man.
It's 2 or 3. That's coming up in 7 minutes. Steyerwalt and I, other side of the break. We've done this for a few weeks. Summer, we've been traveling, sort of missed.
You feel like you're out of the rhythm? Feel like you don't have it anymore?
We'll see. I don't know. Friday Night Unfiltered. It's the one time all week where you get Steyerwalt and I not knowing what's coming. The team gives us the most captivating things that happened this week. We react to it. Item number 1 is of some of the more captivating moments of the week. This, of course, it's so many images, Chris. I don't know where you were last Friday. It was 4th of July. I was with my family. And you wake up and you see the images and you hear about it, and it's just like, we have kids.
You start texting the people you love in Texas, are you okay? Because it was so wrenching, the idea, the scope of the disaster, and it just kept getting worse. As every new piece of information came, and you start and you say, well, there's floods and life's hard. Right. And then pretty soon you say, this is an unimaginable catastrophe.
Next item.
TSA will no longer require travelers to remove their shoes when they go through our security checkpoints.
How about that?
It's almost as if.
Oh, yeah?
It's almost as if it was security theater the whole time.
Okay.
And that it's almost as if the TSA, watch me get random polled every flight for the rest of the year.
Here.
But it's almost as if what we built for the security apparatus for air travel wasn't really that good. Okay. But it's supposed to make people feel safer by inconveniencing them and making me look at some hippie's toe ring in the scanner in front of me. So good riddance.
All right, last one here. Some of the big items from the week. What do we got? So Superman, right? There was something about immigration or...
Well, Superman is from Krypton.
Right.
And so I guess he's an immigrant.
Right.
And the James Gunn, I think, is the maker of the movie, said it's an immigrant story, which it is, and then it became political.
And the White House
did the thing about Trump. So we can't have nice things. So
politics.
There you go. We have to smear a little politics on everything.
Speaking of politics, this man right here has the best Sunday show in the biz. Who you got this? Ooh, Mike Lawler.
Yeah, exactly. We got a Republican. We got a Democrat. We're going to talk about the Epstein stuff. We're going to talk about the goings-on at the Justice Department. We're going to talk about the Texas blame game. We're going to do all of it. George Will's on the panel. I don't know what else anybody wants from me. What else do you want from me on a Sunday morning?
A fantastic show, which you're going to give America what it wants.
There you go. You can have it. No bacon.
Thank you, brother. No bacon. Appreciate it. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. We'll be back tomorrow. Catch Chris Sunday. I'm Blake Berman.